All right, and welcome back to the Monday Injury Report, the Performance Injury Report, because we don't always do it on Mondays. Sometimes we do it on Fridays. So we kind of rebranded it because we do it whenever the people need it and want it. Whenever we get to talk about injuries, we will do it. So, Dr. Mark, thank you for joining us. How you been?
I'm been good. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing good. Let's jump right in. We got a lot to talk about. Let's jump right in. All right. So, first up, Tom Brady comes out after their little celebration parade on the water. He was seen wearing a knee brace, not playing football. So I think that's usually a little concerning when you see somebody wearing a knee brace just to party it up a little bit. So now they're saying he's going to have to go in for surgery, a little cleanup. Some people, get a little nervous, think that he had a torn ACL. I think they're trying to build up this story of how crazy it is. But not taking anything away. It is crazy. 43 years old, playing with some sort of knee damage in the same knee, which he did have an ACL tear back in 2008. So what do you think is going on with the knee? What do you think the procedure is going to be if you had to guess?
If I had to guess, I certainly don't. Not to say that you can't play quarterback with an ACL tear, because we did hear that Phillip Rivers did that, a while back when he was on the Chargers and they were trying to beat the Patriots way back when. So not that you can't play quarterback with a torn ACL, you can, right? It's very difficult, I would be shocked if Tom Brady had an ACL tear on that side. I think it's more, we know after ACL surgery, there's a tendency to get a little bit more arthritis as that person gets older, as that athlete gets older. So I wonder if it's just a little bit of a cleanup that they got to do. Maybe there's some scar tissue in there that they want to clean up. I wonder maybe if he had like a meniscus tear throughout some point during the season, he tore his meniscus, or maybe had an MCL injury, maybe an MCL with a meniscus kind of thing going on. So I think that they're going to probably do some arthroscopic surgery, clean out the joint a little bit, get rid of some of that scar tissue. I don't foresee that being a big problem or hampering Tom Brady next year in any way. If it is that, obviously we'll have to stay tuned and see if we get more news. But I would guess it's just like a cleanup, maybe a meniscus tear that they're going to try to clean up for him a little bit, and he should be good to go for next year.
Yeah, Mark, let me ask you this, because I've dealt with the meniscus thing before myself. Is it true that a lot of people walking around today with no pain in their knee could possibly have a slight meniscus tear or something like that going on?
Very true. Yes, Nick, that is accurate. So a lot of times, past the age of 30, we start to develop small meniscus tears that are very normal, kind of a sign of aging. What you'll see a lot is as we get older, the meniscus from just years of us walking on it will get thinner and start to fray a little bit at the edges. And so in the old days, they would say, oh, that's a tear, you got to get surgery for that. And now we're starting to realize that that's just kind of a normal sign of aging. We can do some things to kind of save the joint and save that meniscus, make sure it doesn't get any worse. But very common that people have meniscus tears in their knees and don't even realize it. As a great surgeon, Dr. James Andrews says all the time, if you want an excuse to have surgery, go get an MRI, because you can find something on MRI.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't end up getting surgery on my knee, and I ended up just letting it. I actually just took some time off I was playing softball and golfing at the time. I think it was the torque of the twisting. I just took some time off from both, and it started to feel better. So I do see that we have some people out there watching us live on both Twitter and Facebook right now. You could watch us on YouTube as well. Just a reminder, if you have any questions about your favorite player, put them down in the comments below, or just shoot us a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. We'll give you a little shout out on the screen. But let's move on. Let's talk about the Celtics. They've been struggling as of late for a number of reasons, but playing right around 500 basketball. They have a lot of talent on that team, but they're a little banged up. Let's talk about first Jaylen Brown. He's dealing with a little bit of knee tendonitis. What's your prognosis on that? Is he going to miss time? How much time? When can we expect him back? I know somebody that we're going to talk about down the line. You kind of called that they give the 1 to 2 week prognosis, and it ends up being a lot longer than that. So what are your thoughts on Jaylen Brown to start?
Yeah, so I think Jaylen Brown, we talked about him a couple weeks ago. We didn't really have any specific diagnosis or injury he was dealing with. I think we talked about he probably has a little tendonitis, maybe a meniscus injury, some joint soreness. That's very common for basketball players. So then, as things most of the time happen, Nick, after we got off the injury report, I think a few hours later it came out that he did have tendonitis. I think Danny Ainge said that in an interview, that he was dealing with some tendonitis, which is again, very common for basketball players. So I think that you could probably poll every basketball player at some point in their career or history. They've had some type of tendonitis. I know in the old days, this is how old I am, but I learned knee tendonitis, a patella tendonitis. We used to call that jumper's knee because it was very common in basketball players, and all they do is jump around and run around. So it's very common that they get that. So I'm not concerned about that, but I think like you have to be concerned now. We're going to talk about another guy on here, and we know Kemba Walker has been on a restriction, a minute restriction because of his knee issue. So now we have Jaylen Brown in on the action with this knee tendonitis, which is probably not going to get better between now and the end of the season. It probably can just get worse. So they're going to have to manage his minutes. They're going to have to manage his time. I really think they want to avoid him playing in the All-Star game if the NBA is going to have an All-Star game. And then that's going to be one more player that's going to be on minutes restrictions moving forward. And they're going to have to make sure that they take good care of him and take good care of his knees. So you might see him maybe sit on a back-to-back. If they have a back-to-back night, maybe he sits that second game in a back-to-back or doesn't play the first game. And we have to wait and see. I mean, I think the problem with the knee tendonitis is it can go from managing it to having a little bit of discomfort to now, the player can't play at all very quickly. So they have to do a good job at kind of managing the load, managing his minutes, restrict his minutes to make sure, again, we still got the playoffs to think about. And I think these are kind of the things that we talked about back in around Christmas when the league started playing again. We had talked about, there's probably going to be more incidents of these kind of chronic overuse injuries because the guys, they had kind of a weird season last year. They didn't really get a lot of time off, especially for the teams that went deep in the bubble like the Celtics did. And now, they're starting up this new season and they have a lot of games. They're playing 82 games, but they're doing them in a shortened, condensed season. So there's a lot of games. There's going to be a lot of wear and tear on these guys. So definitely a little bit of a concern for the Jaylen Brown, especially since he's having such a good season. You'd hate to have him miss some time, but he might have to miss a little bit of time here and there. I don't think he'll have to miss like 3 or 4 weeks if they manage it right, but here and there they might have to miss a little time.
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning. I mean, the Celtics have made the conference finals, 3 out of the last 4 years. They're playing, like I said, right around 500 basketball right now. If they are one and done in the playoffs or anything, it's gonna be a real disappointment for the talent that they got. Another talented guy on the team who has missed some time and now came back and actually spoke about it a little bit post game after he was struggling one game, and that's Jason Tatum talking about a little post-COVID fatigue, post-COVID syndrome, whatever you want to call it, saying that he is feeling a little sluggish out there. I saw that Cam Newton came out earlier this week too and said that he never felt like he got back on track after he had COVID. I mean,
yeah.
Are these built-in excuses for when they're struggling, or do you think this is a real thing that these players are dealing with?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a real thing. I think, when you look at, there's been some documentation and some articles coming out now on those long-term effects of COVID. Obviously, we know that everyone gets different symptoms of COVID, but that cardiorespiratory effect that COVID can have on your system can definitely be glaring. And I think, again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we didn't have any really concrete information to go on. But Jason Tatum did bring it up in a press conference, later that week, that he was feeling winded, especially at first. He's been getting better, but he still deals with, at times, he feels a little winded. And you can kind of tell when he's playing, he looks like he doesn't have his legs underneath him. He looks a little bit fatigued, and he's dealing with that. Like you said, Cam Newton kind of said the same thing. A lot of these players are experiencing the same, kind of thing where they don't feel like they have their legs on them. They feel winded. It's hard to catch their breath, which I think we've all felt before. If anyone's had like a really bad flu or bronchitis or like pneumonia, I think you feel that. And I think, now you're hearing these elite athletes deal with that with COVID. So it kind of put into perspective, the rest of us normal people who maybe get COVID, might have some issues with that moving forward, getting back into exercise and stuff like here. Shameless plug, who can help you get back into exercise? Your physical therapist. Let us know. We can help you out with that.
Nice.
But I think it's just interesting to hear some of these athletes who are dealing with that. And we think that, Cam Newton was out with COVID and then, 3 or 4 weeks later he was back in and we're ready to roll. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's not still dealing with the effects of his COVID-19, virus, even after he's contracted it and now he's testing negative for it. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's back to 100%. And we kind of confirm that with Jason Tatum. So something to keep an eye on. COVID's not going away, obviously. So something to keep an eye on as the season goes on and the season progresses. And hopefully all these athletes will be able to return to 100%, but it definitely looks like it's going to just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, and you wonder if age, if age has anything to do with it too. Cam Newton, a guy, up in his mid 30s compared to Jason Tatum in his, young 20s. It'd be interesting to see if one of them is more successful at bouncing back, coming back from it. I don't know how much the post-COVID had to do with Cam Newton's ability to throw the football, but that's a whole nother story. Let's not get into it. All right, so let's talk about the last piece of the Celtics puzzle, and that's guard Marcus Smart and his calf. We talked about him back the end of January, and they said 1 to 2 weeks. And I'll give it to you, Mark. You called it. You said you don't always trust the medical staff for the Celtics. So they say one thing, next thing you know, the guy misses the rest of the season. But obviously he is. I mean, I talked about him being gritty, him being that Mr. Hustle out there, that piece that kind of just keeps the teams in it. And it seems like that's the case. They have not looked the same without him. He's the glue that holds that team together and gets them fired up. So you can now take a bow or whatever you'd like for calling it, that he would miss some more time than just 1 or 2 weeks. But what do you think the outlook on Marcus Smart? I'm going to actually wrap this kind of pull in Anthony Davis too, because he's dealing with the same thing, a calf and an Achilles injury, and he came back, and now he's going to miss some more time. So it looks like the Celtics are trying to avoid that. Everyone thinks these calf Achilles things, and they think of Kevin Durant coming back, and then all of a sudden rupturing his Achilles. So let's talk about both those guys kind of in one. Start with Marcus Smart.
Yeah, so I think when you see Anthony Davis, I think that's why you have to be. Because Anthony Davis was out with a calf strain, if I remember correctly, and anyone watching, feel free to correct me here, but he came back and then he had to miss more time because then he re-aggravated his injury. And when he re-aggravated his injury, they were afraid that he tore his Achilles tendon. And that's the same exact thing that happened to Kevin Durant when he was in the finals with Golden State. I remember talking about that with you, that, yeah, he could play, but there's a chance that he could do some more damage or tear his Achilles tendon. Because remember, when you strain a muscle, when you strain that calf muscle, the ability for the muscle and the tendon to accommodate the force that's generated is going to decrease. So if you're going into it and your calf can only, your tendon can only accommodate 50% of a contraction. Well, if you go to 100% of that contraction, that tendon's going to fail and rupture. So when you're injured, that kind of makes it a little bit more at the forefront with that. So that's what they're worried about with Marcus Smart. I've never been able to, in my experience, and I don't work with professional athletes and stuff like that, I've never been able to get anyone back from a calf strain in 1 to 2 weeks. So I was kind of skeptical at that. So I do think that Marcus Smart's probably going to have to miss another 3 to 4 weeks, depending on what's going on. I haven't heard anything that he's been able to run or been back at practice. I think the last thing I saw said that he was hopefully going to make his return this week. I don't believe that. I think he's going to be out for another few weeks because they have to make sure that they do the right thing, give him enough time. And calves, like hamstrings, are one of those muscle groups that you feel really good until you do something like jump, like cut, like change direction. And that calf goes just like that, and you re-aggravate the injury, and then you run the risk of causing more damage. That's what happened to Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis now has been out. I think he's going to be out now until mid-March, they're saying. I haven't heard anything on whether the MRI was conclusive on whether it showed an Achilles tear. But obviously they're going to now, by him coming back too soon, now they've kind of delayed his healing time. So now kind of everything kind of starts over again. The clock starts over for that reason. So now, he might not be making his return until end of March, maybe April. So you take an injury that was bad, now you get them back too soon, and now they re-injure it. And this is kind of the same thing we were just talking about Jaylen Brown. It's not a lot more back-to-backs, a lot more 4 or 5 games in a week now with these guys because the season is condensed down, and this is the kind of stuff that we see when that happens. So,
yeah, I mean, the NBA is a superstar league, so they want these big players back. They want them out there, but I mean, at what cost? You rush them back, and then they end up missing more time, and then it kind of, it messes with your playoff seeding. It messes, with the whole outlook looking down into the playoffs. So we do have a comment coming in from
a good comment. I love it.
Good comment.
Patricia, love it.
From Patricia Pompey, Boston Red Sox fan. I can tell by her logo, her Facebook image there. A little side note. This is my Aunt Patty. Hi, Aunt Patty. Thanks for
Aunt Patty. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. watching from East Providence, Rhode Island, Riverside. So she says, hopefully Eduardo Rodriguez is 100%. That's a good question because he was dealing with COVID, but then he also had an enlarged or inflammation of the heart linked to his coronavirus, which is very scary.
Yeah.
That seems like a whole nother layer to this corona thing. But it looks like he is going to be able to get down to spring training, and he's hoping to be available and to get cleared. He says he's ready to go. He's 27 years old. What should we look for with Erod this year?
Yeah, so with any virus, right? A virus can spread and attack different parts of the body. So, but one of the things that they're seeing with COVID, and this obviously is an extreme case. Not everyone that gets COVID has this type of thing. We call that a myocarditis, an inflammation, of the heart, inflammation of the lining of the heart. That can be obviously very dangerous, very severe, because if that virus is affecting the lining of the heart, then there can be obviously repercussions for how your heart functions and stuff like that. So especially when you're exercising, your heart rate goes up, all the things that happen when you're exercising puts more demands on the heart. So this is a very rare thing that happens. Although this is one of the reports that they found in some of the NCAA athletes that had COVID, there was a high percentage of people that had this inflammation, the same inflammation that Eduardo Rodriguez has. And so that, again, just takes some time. It takes some medication. They're going to have to make sure they monitor him as he is coming back into spring training. They're going to go very, very slowly with him just to make sure that he is 100% because they can't risk his future health. This even goes beyond the baseball diamond. This goes into him being able to live a normal life with his family as he retires. So, hopefully we see Eduardo Rodriguez. I haven't seen any recent reports, but everything looked like it was progressing the way they wanted to. I would not expect him in the lineup anytime before, this summer, like June, July. I think they're going to take their time with him and make sure everything is 100%, obviously, before they let him pitch again. This is a guy I think he was injured last year as well. So going to give him a little bit more time. But yeah, he is going down to spring training. I think they're going to be real slow with his progression as they go through spring training and make sure that everything looks good. He's going to have a lot of, MRIs and stuff like that to make sure that his heart is healing, that it's not still inflamed and all those things. So definitely a little bit of a different case. So we appreciate the question, but I think that he'll be able to make a full return. It's just a matter of when, whether it'll be this year, halfway through the year, or maybe it's something next year where he's coming back.
Yeah, and that's a scary thing too. It's just the unknown, the unknown of it. But then you see these athletes that are dealing with these types of, inflammation and other things that are stemming from it. All right, last one I got for you. Defenseman Gerard Pique. He tore his ACL in November, and he actually played this weekend. And as you told me in the pre-show, that he was going up against Mbappe, one of the fastest players in the league, and he ended up having to come out of the game November to February for an ACL tear. Good idea?
Not a good idea. Yeah. So we always talk about, in Europe with their ACL recoveries, they're a lot more accelerated than some of the ACL recoveries we see here in the States. So a lot of times with the soccer players, 3 to 5 months, those guys are starting to make their return, which in America, usually we see like 6 to 9 months. So they're doing something right over there. I think the funniest thing was like I told you before in our pre-show, like some of the worst sports medicine management that you can see. Because I think 2 weeks ago, or like maybe a week and a half before the game, they said that he was progressing well. They weren't going to rush him back. Everything was good to go. You don't expect to see him back before the end of March. And then all of a sudden he's in the lineup playing against PSG. Kylian Mbappe, who, is very fast. He's not even 21 years old yet. Very young, very good. And Barcelona lost 4-1. And during the game, I think in the 30th minute, because there's no fans in the crowd, you can hear Piqué getting into a shouting match with some of his other players and teammates, asking them to help him defend. And then, like you said, he had to kind of be subbed out, I think, in the second half in like the 60th or the 70th minute. So kind of a head scratcher. I'm not really sure what the goal there was, why you're allowing a player who also is in his 30s, has got a lot of tread on his knees over the years, coming back from an ACL, and you kind of put him in that position to kind of fail. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in athletic training and physical therapy is if we can, hi mom, that's my mom, everyone. So one of the things we always talk about in athletic training and physical therapy is like, the mental aspect of these players returning to sport. Are they mentally ready? Yeah, maybe physically they could be ready, but mentally, are they ready? And I just think that you really kind of sold that player short. You kind of sent him upriver without any paddles or any boat, really. He barely, has had sniffed a game, and now you're playing him in a primetime game in the Champions League against one of the better teams in the world. Not the best option, not the best decision in my book. So I don't think we'll see PK again now for a few weeks. I don't really see the need to kind of rush him back now. I'm not sure if he played over the weekend. I didn't watch that game, so I'm not sure if he played over the weekend, but I think that he's going to need a couple more weeks. He didn't look good when he played on last Tuesday, so I don't think we'll see him going forward anytime soon.
I think they just wanted to be able to. They wanted the commentators to be able to go PK versus Mbappe, and they just wanted. It sounded too good for them not to roll them out.
It is fun to say. It is fun to say. That's for sure.
Mbappe might be the best name in all sports. It's great. Yeah. Just you can't say it without going like Mbappe. You know, like just like really putting a little something on it. I love it.
Very true.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Mark, but mostly I want to thank the fans out there, the viewers who were watching today and asking questions, saying hi. Remember, everybody out there, if you have a question about your favorite player, somebody on your fantasy team, somebody who is a little dinged up and you want to know about it, you have to ask your questions down in the comments below, and Dr. Mark and I will get to them. We'll answer any question that you may have. We're going to be doing this every Monday around 1 o'clock. So even if you can't join us live, put your questions in the comments under this video. If you're watching this throughout the week, I check them every week, and Dr. Mark and I will answer them next Monday. It's almost March.
My God, one more week to go. I love it.
One more week. The one good thing about February being a short month is March is there. And March, you're like, oh, spring's almost here. Spring is almost here. March 20th, and then we'll be ready to go. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you for having me. Thanks for everyone watching along with us.
Yeah, thanks. We really enjoy engaging with the viewers. So anytime anybody is on there watching us, make sure to let us know you're here. Everybody have a happy, healthy, safe week. Peace.
Everyone.